There are women who awaken, and there are women who merely pass through. The difference lies not in their hands, but in their intention. For a deep man does not ignite from empty gestures, he burns when someone dares to explore the hidden chambers of his soul. Do you wonder why he no longer sees you the way he once did? Why the desire seems to have faded? It's not your age. It's not your appearance. It's that you've forgotten how to stir what truly matters. As long as you believe desire is born only in the bedroom, you'll remain caught in a cycle of frustration, unseen, untouched in the ways that matter most. Today I will reveal 5 places where a man longs to be touched. He may never speak of them, may not even know them himself, but they hold the key to awakening his mind, his body, and his soul. The last one is the most transformative, yet also the most elusive, unless you know how to channel it. This is not a lesson for the curious. It's a revelation for the invisible, for the women who are tired of being overlooked, tired of giving without stirring fire. Have you ever touched a man and felt nothing? No spark. No shift in his breath. Just that hollow silence that tells you your gesture didn't land, didn't reach him? Then stay with me, because what you're about to learn will awaken more than just his body. It will awaken the man himself. Let me tell you why. Because you touched him where everyone else has, and he doesn't need that. That's the mistake. You're trying to crack a safe with the same combination you used 30 years ago, and none of it works anymore. Let's begin with the first place, the lower back, the quiet frontier where his armor begins to fall away. It's no coincidence that this is exactly where the weight of the years settles. Not just the strain of muscles, but the weight of everything, the responsibilities he's carried, the silent battles he's fought, the dreams set aside to hold others up. A man who has lived, truly lived, does not need to be touched thoughtlessly. He doesn't crave hands that wander aimlessly. He needs presence. He needs to be touched in a way that says, "I see you, I'm here." Picture this. He's standing in front of you, fixing something around the house, replying to another endless stream of emails, surrounded by the quiet hum of routine. You don't call his name. You don't interrupt. You simply walk up behind him and rest your hand on the curve of his lower back. Not abruptly. Not seductively. But with calm, steady intention. A touch that doesn't ask for anything, doesn't seek to provoke, only to connect. A touch that carries weight, not desire. Respect, not urgency. And in that moment, if it's real, if it's present, something subtle but powerful begins to shift. Not because you're arousing him, but because you're speaking to something deeper, his collective unconscious. As Jung might say, you're reminding him, quietly, powerfully, that someone still sees him as a man. That someone notices what the world has long overlooked. But don't get it twisted, this isn't magic. It's not about touching for the sake of touching. It's about being there, fully. Letting your energy speak what words no longer can. The lower back is a silent zone, a place that cries out without sound. And only the women who have stopped chasing validation, who have stopped needing to be seen in order to see, can hear that call. Want proof? Think back. When was the last time a man shivered just from a hand resting lightly on his waist? When was the last time that small gesture carried meaning, not lust, not obligation, but presence? It's likely been so long, you don't even associate it with anything real anymore. And why? Because we've been taught that it takes intensity, bold moves, fiery words, bedroom theatrics, to keep desire alive. But that's the lie. Desire, real desire, lives in the details. In the pause. In the quiet touch that says, "I didn't come to use you, I came to behold you." Touch him there, with intention. Not to get something. Not to awaken lust. But to awaken him. Do it with no rush, no expectation. just the presence of a woman who knows what it means to truly see. And if you do it right, if your energy is honest, you'll realize it's not his skin you're touching. It's something far deeper. What you touched wasn't just his body. It was his shadow, as Jung would call it. His story. His silent struggle. His need to be seen not as a provider, not as a father or friend, but as a whole man. This is where true desire begins. Not in the flesh, but in the soul. And that, my friend, is a truth few ever grasp. Second point, the touch that revives what's been forgotten. If you truly understood what we've already explored, then you know. Desire doesn't rise from what's obvious. It awakens when you touch with purpose. When you remind a man that even under the ashes, a fire still lives. And that fire isn't fed by what is visible. It's stoked by what's been forgotten. That brings us to the second point. The inner part of his arm, the overlooked passage to connection. Not his chest, not his hands, not his lips. But that tender, almost secret stretch of skin between his wrist and elbow. Soft. Unassuming. Intimate. It's here, where few ever think to reach, that one of the most powerful bridges between emotional and physical intimacy lies. But because it's quiet, because it doesn't scream for attention, most never notice it. And that blindness? It's costing you his desire. Because this isn't just a touch, it's a reminder. A reminder that someone still sees the places no one else bothers to explore. That someone is willing to find beauty in the forgotten. And when you touch him there, with stillness, with reverence, you do more than stir his body. You awaken the part of him that thought connection like this no longer existed. The inner part of the arm, that quiet, unassuming stretch of skin, is, according to neuropsychology, rich with sensitive nerve endings. But that's not what truly matters. What matters is something deeper. This place holds the imprint of emotional memory. Yes, the memory of affection. Of tenderness, once freely given. The echo of early touches that asked for nothing in return. The first caresses that weren't seduction but sanctuary. When you touch this area with gentleness and quiet intention, you're not acting like an anxious teenager seeking validation. You're awakening something far older, something archetypal. As Jung would say, you're speaking the language of the unconscious. You're saying, without words, I can touch you without needing anything in return, simply because you are worthy of being touched. Now pause and consider this. How many times in his adult life, his mature life, do you think a man has been caressed like that? Not as a precursor to sex, not as a demand, but simply as a gesture of presence? How many times has a hand rested on his skin, just to remind him that he is still here, still alive, still worthy of affection, without condition? Very, very few. Because as men age, touch either becomes mechanical, transactional, or it vanishes altogether. The women around him stop touching him with curiosity. They stop reaching out with wonder, with softness, with reverence. And so he begins to forget. He forgets what it feels like to be held without being used. He forgets that his body still speaks a language worth listening to. But you, if you understand this, can remind him. Not with words, but with the kind of touch that doesn't demand, only remembers they see him as a father, a friend, a pillar of support. But rarely, almost never, as a man. And that erodes him more than time ever could. That's what withers the root of desire. From Stoicism comes a powerful truth. You cannot control how others perceive you. But you can control the value you give to the smallest acts. Touching the inner arm is one of those acts. subtle, almost invisible. But when done with intention, it becomes something else entirely. A choice to be present. And presence, real presence, has the power to restore what once seemed lost. A man who receives this kind of touch doesn't think, "She's trying to seduce me." He thinks, "She sees me. She's reminding me that I still have something to offer. That there's still beauty in me beneath the years, the burdens, the silence." This kind of touch doesn't ask for anything. It doesn't press. It doesn't pull. It simply is. But its impact is profound because it reaches an ancient place within him. It awakens a forgotten need. To feel valued, simply for being. It speaks without words. "I see you, not your age, not your scars, not your roles, just you." And when a man feels that, genuinely, deeply, something shifts. He softens. He exhales. He begins to lower the walls he didn't even know he built. And in that quiet surrender, something sacred returns. He begins to look at you differently. Not because you've promised anything, but because you've returned something he thought was gone forever. His right to be desired. The great mistake is believing that desire is triggered by lingerie, by sweet words, or by seductive promises. No, that kind of desire is fleeting. Real desire awakens when you dare to touch where others never do. When you move beyond the surface. When you understand that the body is not just skin, it's a story. And every gesture, every pause, every intentional touch can be the key that unlocks a door long forgotten. So, the next time you're with him, don't chase the shortcut. Don't reach for performance. Just place your hand on the inner part of his arm. Say nothing. Stay there. Present. Feeling. If you do it right, you'll notice the shift. Not in what he says, but in how he breathes. In the way his eyes begin to rest on you, not with need, but with recognition. In that quiet tremor just beneath the surface. A subtle stirring that tells you something inside him has awakened. And that is where the real thing begins. Not sex. Not conquest. But connection. The kind that endures. The kind that transforms. The kind so few women ever learn to create. Because it doesn't come from wanting to be loved. It comes from daring to see. Third point, where vulnerability becomes surrender. By now you understand. Touching is not the same as connecting. A caress without intention, without presence, is often worse than no touch at all. We've already spoken of the lower back and the inner arm. But now, we arrive at a place few dare to explore. Not because it's hidden, but because it requires something more. Understanding. Presence. Courage. We've reached the third point. This is where everything begins to shift. The edge of the jaw. Where vulnerability meets surrender. This place is not just physically sensitive. It's symbolically powerful. It rests near the eyes, the neck, the mouth. The three gates of expression, perception, and truth. To touch a man here is to speak a silent sentence. I am close enough to hurt you, but I choose to protect you. And do you know what that does to a mature man? A man who has spent years guarded, vigilant, carrying the weight of his world. It gives him something rare, something sacred. The permission to trust. Because the edge of the jaw isn't touched in haste. It isn't a shortcut to arousal. It's a moment of reverence. It's the kind of touch that says, I have all the time in the world. I don't need to rush, because I understand that true desire doesn't live in urgency. It lives in stillness, in the pause, in the unspoken promise, you are safe here. That kind of touch doesn't just awaken the man. It allows him to exhale, to put down the armor, to remember that surrender can be beautiful when it's born from trust, not fear. And that's where real intimacy begins. Here's a practical strategy. One that can quietly, yet profoundly, shift the way you connect with a man who has lived. The next time you're in a calm conversation with him, don't interrupt with flirtation. Don't offer romantic words or clever hints. Instead, lean in slowly, gently, and let your finger rest lightly on the edge of his jaw. Say nothing. Look into his eyes. Not with a smile. Not with seduction. Just look, steady, quiet, present. Hold that moment. Let the silence say what words never could. Then, just as slowly, remove your hand and return to the conversation as if nothing happened. Did you feel that? That is power. Not the power to manipulate, but the power of full, grounded presence. Because that one gesture speaks louder than any compliment ever could. It tells him, yes, I hold power, but I don't use it to control, I use it to protect. I have nothing to prove, I'm simply here. And in that moment, he sees something rare. A woman who doesn't chase, who doesn't perform, who simply is. If he chooses to stay, it's not because you convinced him. It's because you reminded him of something he didn't know he missed. This kind of touch breaks patterns. Because most women are waiting for the right moment. The perfect time to kiss, to caress, to say something that works. But the women who truly awaken desire, they don't wait for moments. They create them. And this touch, this brush along the edge of his jaw, is not a technique. It's a silent declaration. You're telling him, you can surrender without fear. I'm not here to take advantage. I'm here to witness you entirely, your wounds and your strength alike. Fourth point, the place he never expected you to notice. If you've come this far, then you already understand. To touch the body without touching the soul is like lighting a candle in a room filled with dust. The flame flickers and quickly dies. Genuine connection isn't built on scripted phrases or polished techniques. It's built on presence, on intention, on a deep, quiet knowing. But even with the best of intentions, there's a subtle, silent mistake. One that can unravel everything. Even when you think you're doing it all right. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about the fourth point. The space behind the knees. The place he never expected you to notice. This small, almost forgotten area is more than just sensitive skin. It's a metaphor for everything unseen, unspoken, dismissed. Behind the knees lies a vulnerability that doesn't respond to logic and doesn't awaken with desire alone. It's the territory of what's being left behind, what's not shown, what's been deemed unimportant. And here is where so many go wrong. They chase what shines. They reach for what the world names desirable. But they ignore the hidden, the quiet, the seemingly insignificant. Yet it is exactly there, in the places no one else thinks to touch, that the soul begins to stir. The mistake is this: believing that only what's visible matters. That only what he shows you is worthy of being touched. So many women get trapped in the obvious. They try to transform their lives from the surface, changing their appearance, adjusting their tone, practicing confidence like a script. But they leave the deeper layers untouched, just like the space behind the knees. Sensitive, overlooked, vulnerable in a way few ever consider. Here lies the trap. Thinking that if something isn't spoken, it doesn't exist. That if a man doesn't ask to be touched there, it must mean nothing. That if you don't yet understand the value of something, it must not be valuable at all. And so you go on avoiding the uncomfortable, avoiding the unfamiliar, avoiding the places that don't fit into the narrative of what intimacy is supposed to look like. This is why so many women feel unseen in their relationships. Why they try and try and try, and still feel like they can't reach him. They change their clothes, their words, their attitude, but they stay the same inside, disconnected from the deeper language of the body and soul. And a man? He senses it. Not through logic, not through conversation, but through his body. Through the silence. Through the subtle widening distance that no amount of effort seems too close. But when you touch behind his knees, gently, unexpectedly, without agenda or performance, you're sending a message no one else ever has. I see what others ignore. I care about what you thought you had to keep hidden. I'm not here for what's easy. I'm here for what's real. And in that moment, quiet, brief, almost imperceptible, something within him begins to soften. That touch, behind the knees, isn't just unexpected. It's a signal, a quiet revelation, that you care even about the parts he himself has forgotten. That you're not there just for what's easy or polished or gratifying. You're there for what matters. And in the mind of a mature man, that is revolutionary. Because most men, by a certain point, have given up hope for that kind of attention. They've stopped expecting to be seen in the places that ache silently. They've grown accustomed to invisibility. Not in the eyes of the world, but in the deepest parts of their body and soul. Jung would call this the encounter with the shadow. The unclaimed, rejected parts we bury to survive. The places no one asks about. The places even he may no longer touch. And when those places are ignored in intimacy, the consequences are profound. You don't just lose his desire. You lose something far more valuable, his respect. Because a man who has lived, truly lived, he knows when you're improvising. He feels when your gestures come from a script rather than presence. And that is when you become just another woman. Another woman who didn't know how to touch. Where it aches. Where it vibrates. Where life, though quiet, still lingers. But when you place your hand behind his knees, not erotically, not to provoke, but with the same natural grace you'd use to touch his face, something begins to shift. Not just in him, in you. Because what you're doing isn't physical. You're saying, I'm not afraid of your depth, I'm not afraid of what's unspoken, I see it and I honor it. And that is the beginning of something very few women ever create. Not performance. Not seduction. But real intimacy. Because when you train yourself to see what no one else sees, to value what others overlook, something begins to change. Not just in the way you touch him, but in the way you see yourself. You begin to notice the parts of you that you too have ignored. The fears you buried. The emotions you silenced. The aching desire to be touched with respect, with curiosity, with presence. So don't be fooled. what may seem like a simple spot on the body is often a portal to the soul. And that portal doesn't open to those chasing quick results. It opens only for those courageous enough to face the invisible, to reach for something deeper than pleasure, something like transformation. Fifth and final point, the connection that transcends the body. We've reached the final moment in this journey. And if you've truly listened, truly felt every word along the way, then you already understand. This was never about seduction techniques. It was never about control. It was about coming back to something sacred. Something many gave up on long ago. Self-respect. This final point isn't just another physical place. It's not another nerve ending to memorize. It's a symbol, a mirror, a message. The scalp, the crown of the head, a place most associate with grooming, routine, necessity. But few recognize its true power. Because when you touch the scalp with tenderness, with reverence, with intention, you're not just touching his body. You're touching his mind, his energy, his spirit. This is the connection that transcends the physical. The place where the body ends, and something greater begins. And if you don't understand what this place represents, you'll stay trapped on the surface, mistaking desire for something merely physical, when in truth, it's mental, emotional, spiritual. As Jung would say, this is the point of contact with the animus, the masculine energy that every woman carries within herself. Touching a man's scalp is not the same as running your fingers through his hair. It's far more intimate than that. It's touching the root of his inner world. The place where thoughts knot together, where tension quietly settles, where self-doubt builds its home. When you touch him there, truly touch him, you're telling him without words, I don't just want your body, I want your mind, and I'm willing to hold it with care. But here's the truth, not everyone can do this. Because when done carelessly, it feels invasive, too soft, and it's meaningless, too forced, and it's uncomfortable. But when done with full presence, with reverence instead of need, it becomes one of the most powerful forms of connection a woman can offer. Because to do it right, you must be someone who's not afraid of silence. Someone whose fingers can speak what words cannot. Someone who doesn't rush. Who doesn't need constant confirmation to feel worthy. And there lies the real challenge. Most women can't stand silence. They crave instant reaction. They want a sign, his eyes to widen, his breath to quicken, something to prove, yes, you're doing it right. And when that response doesn't come quickly enough, they grow frustrated. They pull away. Or worse, they slip into self-pity and start believing the story. Maybe I'm not enough, they say. I did everything right, and he didn't even look at me. What they fail to understand is this: desire isn't awakened by pressure, it is cultivated through patience. Touching the scalp isn't meant to arouse. It is meant to connect. To make him feel that at last, someone can hold him. Not to take, not to demand, but simply to be. But if you keep chasing shortcuts, you'll end up like so many others, frustrated, confused, unable to comprehend why he keeps shutting down. The truth is simple. It's not that he cannot feel anymore. It's that he no longer trusts. And with your impatience, your need for something in return, you only confirm his deepest fear. That opening up isn't worth the risk. that no woman truly understands the sacredness of deep connection. When touched with intention, the scalp triggers the release of oxytocin, the hormone of trust. And if you can make him feel that with you, without sex, without manipulation, then you are touching what truly matters. But this is no easy task. It demands a different mindset. You must stop acting like an emotional beggar, waiting for him to validate your existence. You must begin to move like a woman who is already whole. Because only from that place of fullness, of genuine wholeness, can you touch without need, without anxiety, without urgency. That is the difference between women who awaken desire and those who merely awaken pity. Changing this pattern doesn't begin with altering your gestures. It begins with changing your intention. With understanding that if you're not ready to touch with your soul, it's better not to touch at all. Men don't sense touch through their skin alone. They feel it through energy. And if you're empty inside, he will feel it. So transform, but do it for real. Not with promises. Not with pretty words. But with presence, patience, and respect. And if you don't know where to begin, start here. The next time you're with him, stay silent. Draw near. Place your hand gently on his head. Stay there. Breathe calmly. Don't search for a reaction. Just remain. Because that one simple, sincere gesture can awaken something in him no one else has ever reached. His desire to trust again. And when that happens, prepare yourself. Because you won't just be touching a man. You'll be touching what Jung called his self. His deepest essence. And that is where the real begins. That is where true desire is born. If you've made it this far, you are not like the rest. Because most give up when it starts to hurt, when the truth shakes their ego, or reminds them of everything they've let die inside. But you stayed. You listened. You reflected. And now you stand at a crossroads. Will you keep living and touching life superficially? Or will you dare to touch where it truly matters? No one can force you to awaken. But if anything you heard today resonated deep within you, then you can never unsee it. It's time to honor those who never gave up. The ones who still believe they can reclaim their respect, their desire, and their presence. If you are one of them, write it in the comments along with your country. Just 4 words, I love wisdom. That phrase says it all. Because this isn't just about men, you know. It's about you. About how you choose to engage with the world. With your emotions. And with your dignity. I'm Gabriel, and this channel, Home of Wisdom, doesn't exist to entertain you. Or to tell you what you want to hear. This channel exists to wake you up. To help you reclaim the power you've given away to others. Here we don't speak in empty theories or easy promises. We speak of living with strength, with intelligence, with purpose. Subscribe now if this message stirred something within you. Not for me. For you. Because joining this community means choosing to wake up. Even when it hurts, it means no longer living numb. And beginning to move forward with clarity. Share this video. Someone else may need to hear what you've just understood. And don't leave just yet. This video isn't the end. It's only the beginning. 2 more videos will appear on the screen. One will show you how to reclaim lost respect. The other, how to set boundaries without guilt. Choose the one your soul needs most right now. Because this conversation isn't over. It's only just begun.